Hello again, RoyZesch.REALTOR here with Coldwell Banker Legacy in San Angelo. Today I want to talk to you about comparable sales. You hear this term a lot in the real estate business. A lot of people sort of know what it means and a lot of people don't know what it means. So today I want to talk about it and explain it a little bit more. Comparable sales are sales on houses that compare to yours, that are comparable, equivalent, as close as we can get to yours. So how do you figure this out? Well, in the multiple listing service, when a house is sold, that gets reported at the sales price to the real estate agent so they can go in and look at the houses that sold. And sometimes it's pretty simple to figure out comparable sales. If you're in a fairly new neighborhood where all the houses are more or less cookie cutter, you may or may not like that, but if the houses are cookie cutter, built in the same age range, same square footage range, in the same neighborhood, it's pretty easy to go and see what is sold in the last few months and figure out, okay, well, if these houses are selling for $200,000, then this house we're listing today should sell for $200,000. So in that case, it's a pretty simple deal. It gets more and more complicated, A, the older the houses are, 2, the more variation there is in the neighborhood, and 3, the farther away from other comparable properties are, the less activity in a neighborhood can affect them too. So if you take a neighborhood like Buffalo Heights, for example, all those houses are fairly new, within a 10-year time frame from oldest to newest, and it's similar square footage, built by just a handful of builders. So it's easy to go in and see what they're worth. But when you get to a neighborhood like College Hills, for example, where some of the houses are 50, 60, 70 years old, it's a lot more complicated. When you get to something like Santa Rita, where the houses are even older and there's a lot more variation from the upper end to the lower end. I mean, there's houses in Santa Rita today from $1 million down to under $100,000. That makes it a lot more complicated. Square footage is part of what we look at. That is an important factor. A bigger house will generally sell for more than a small house, but that's not the only factor. You look at sort of what it would cost to rebuild the house, but the biggest thing is find houses like that have sold in that neighborhood. So as the older the neighborhoods get, the more diverse the neighborhoods get, the harder it is to come up with good comparable sales, and the less activity there is, the harder it is to come up with comparable sales. Because if there's only had 3 houses sell in this neighborhood out of 1,000, it's really hard to say what the next house that's going to sell for is going to be worth. Or if it's a small neighborhood, maybe there's only really 10 or 15, 20 houses, 30 that you can call a neighborhood here. Green Acres is one I'm thinking of. Then it's more difficult because although the houses in that neighborhood are fairly similar, there's not a lot of them selling. There's just not a whole lot of them. So it makes it a lot harder to figure out. So, and it's even more so when you get out to rural property. The farther you get out away from town, the less you're in a neighborhood and the more those factors matter. There are more and more differences between the properties, and so it's hard to compare them because they're so very different. So why does this matter anyway, right? We just price it at what we want to get for it. Well, it's not that simple. First off, it's one of the things that real estate agents use both for the buyer and the seller to help you know how to price the house if you're selling it, or what to offer on the house if you're buying it, so that you know you're offering the market price, because no one wants to pay too much and no one wants to get too little when they're selling a house. So that's important. The other thing is when you're financing the house. This is where it really comes into factor more than anything else. When you're financing a house, one of the things the lender is going to require is an appraisal. So if you have a property that you've agreed to pay $200,000 for, the lender sends an appraiser out. And remember, appraiser is someone who is an expert, quote unquote, at determining the value of these houses. They have a certification to prove it. Some of them are very good. In fact, most of them are very good. So they're going to go out there and try to look at the comparable sales that compared to this property and figure out what this property is worth, and they're going to assign it a value. And for the lender, if that value doesn't equal what you're paying for that property, then they're not going to loan the money on it. So if you have a $200,000 contract to buy the property for $200,000 and the appraisal comes in at $180,000, the lender is not going to loan you the money to buy that property. So you have a couple of problems. One, you have to go back and try to negotiate with the seller if they're willing and able to negotiate. Sometimes you just got a bad appraisal. You don't think that the appraiser did a real good job, but these appraisals were binding. Even if you get another contract, they're pretty well binding for about a 6-month period. So it's very important, and that's why it's important when your agent tells you, especially if you're selling a house, that this is what you should price your house at because this is what the comparables fit. It's important to understand that that's probably what you should do, because if the comps say we should be 220, you price it at 250, and lo and behold, you find somebody that thinks this is a perfect house, I'm willing to pay $250 for it. But then the appraisal comes in at $230 or $225 or something like that, and you haven't solved your problem. So just a little understanding, hopefully, of comparable sales. I mean, properties that you can compare to each other. You make small adjustments for them, as small as possible, but it's very important in valuing the houses. One of the greatest tools that real estate agents, lenders, and appraisers use in trying to figure out the value of your property. So give me a call if you have any more questions. RoyZesch.REALTOR, 325-268-0775. Thank you.